What influences your choice of scenario? Where would you delve for your scenario?
Look at the risks. Look at the risk registers. Look at the strategic risk registers. Look at your. I do a lot of the pastel analysis on geographical locations. I'm looking for like-minded industries that have had experienced problems, and I can get a case study. But the beauty is, you go onto Google and you put in any industry and you put in disaster, crisis, whatever, you'll find a plethora of different directions to then follow in research, which will give you fantastic data that then you can adapt to the organization you're working with. So they can never talk about fighting the exercise.
Yeah, they can never say
struggle
it's not
to
real.
Fight something that has actually happened. I never use a real one. I was asked once to run The Beast from the East, Part 2, that experienced a severe weather event in Ireland, and they wanted to run it exactly the same again because they made a hash of it the first time. And I said, no. And the chief operating officer said, why? And I said, because they'll be stuck in the past. They fixate on the real incident. So what I did was I took all the data from The Beast from the East, and I called it something completely different. I changed the month, I changed the context, but I used all the original Beast from the East data
severe weather
to run the exercise, the severe weather exercise. And nobody knew it was based on the original event, so there was no contamination from the real world.
I'm going to be a little controversial here. I think actually the scenario doesn't matter. And I think, and you're sucking your teeth there, but I think what you need to do is when you look in the exercise is actually saying, what does the scenario need to achieve? I'm looking for downtime of my IT because that's the exercise I'm looking for. I'm looking for denial of access to my building. I'm looking for a cyber attack. So then you want to say, what is it trying to, and I'm trying to look for a cyber attack that really has a massive impact on the crisis team. So it's got to be big and bad enough. And I think what you do is then you start with, say, what's the scenario have to achieve? And then you find, yes, of course you do, is that scenario that meets that requirements. I don't do tons of research on those things because I'm not sure how much, what's gone before, one of my favourites, World War II bombs in the car park. And to say, look, I want a denial of access, and I want also the opportunity that the building's going to be lost. Building's got a data centre in.
Yeah.
So World War II bombs is great. World War II bombs discovered the bomb. There are World War II bombs, so it's not unrealistic. That is enough. You don't need to know how big, how small, where it is, whether it's happened. So I think you can do a lot of work. You can do a lot of work, or you can keep it really, really simple as long as it meets your requirement. I think the worst thing is people who do scenarios and people turn around, that's not an incident. Or that's not enough for the crisis team because we would have done that, or we would ignore that. We'd just get the tactical team to do it. The thing I'm really very anti is the bit the people who do it for entertainment is what they're trying to do is catch the crisis team out. We're trying to find an exercise which is the most fiendish thing. You haven't thought about this, and so you're trying to catch a team out in a risk where, all right, that's fine, but that's only one point you've caught them out in a risk. There's tons of other stuff you want to get out of this exercise. And that's all you have. You're a one-trick pony there. You need to get all the other stuff, the crisis mode.
I've had one where, with the preparation, I've discovered that they're doing something that's bad practice. But the thing I think is really important is I always have to ask permission to expose that within the exercise. And in this particular case, the sales director said, they've got this wrong, we never do that. And she was sat next to the ops director. And I just faced him and said, so you're going to confirm to me now that you never do that? And he just looked petrified. And then she said, are you telling me? And I said, I'll just leave you to it, and just walked away. So, but I think
that's the great part of an exercise.
Yeah. You've got to ask permission because you've got to be careful.
I don't ask permission.
You have to be
I'm scared of with people's
permission.
careers. It can be career limiting. That's my nervousness.
I won't run an exercise. For example, I've been asked to run an exercise, and I read the plans. I ran all my documents, and I said, you're not ready for the exercise. Your plans are leaving huge gaps in your command and control, in your incident response. Some of the basic stuff in the plans, we're assuming everything. There was no design detail in the plan. And I said, if I run you an exercise, it's going to be all developing the plan.
Yes.
If you want to have that, that's not a problem. But it won't be an exercise exercising the plans because your plans are awful.
Essentially, there isn't a plan.
Yeah. So it depends what you want to achieve, but it all starts off with your aims and objectives. What are you actually trying to get out of this? But there are times our job isn't to make friends with people.
No.
Whether we're internally running an exercise or whether we're a consultant coming in to run an exercise. I don't care if the company ever employ me again. I'm there to do a job. So if I expose weaknesses, I've actually done my job.
Yes.
The whole point in running an exercise isn't to go, we were fantastic. Look at all the brilliant things we do. It's to identify the brilliant things. However, the most valid part of an exercise are the golden nugget, cock-ups and weaknesses that you discover that they then go, good God, I'm glad this wasn't a real incident. Because we'd have fallen in that enormous hole.
In a safe environment.
But we're not there to make mates. We're not there to make friends.
And we've talked about this in earlier discussions. How would you bring in priority suppliers into this?
For me, it depends on how many priority suppliers you have, David. I mean, when you have reverse engineered your in-scope products and services through processes, through activities into your supply chain, and you've looked at who the suppliers are, either services or goods, materials, whatever, and then you've characterize those, prioritize those based on their importance, and you'd have to define what important or critical would be. You then need to work out how many have you got. For example, there could be tens, hundreds. How do you exercise hundreds? You could run a workshop, which isn't based on the good practice guidelines. You can run a workshop. I've done this. Workshop, invite a huge amount of the category type suppliers, put them all in a room and run them through quick and dirty snapshots. What would you do if? What would you do?
Or you could do the classic exercise, of the tables, like the multi-agency exercise, where you have the tables, you have tables to suppliers and say, right, suppliers, we're going to do this, what are you going to do? So I think that would be the way if you want to do more than one supplier. I've never run an exercise with a supplier in the room with me yet, but
you find, I haven't
be going off to do something.
I've done that in the past, but you do find that if you've not built that into the contract, they want to give you an extra charge for it. Because it's time and money, isn't it? So
I quite often, I've done it. I haven't done it with suppliers of raw materials, but I've done it with suppliers of specialist services. For example, I've worked with a number of companies who, when I'm running a crisis management exercise, I want their external PR company to be there. And I've had a few PR companies go, we'll need £25,000 to turn up on the day. So I have a bit of a chat and I say, you do realise your opportunity to sell your wares. You're on a retainer, which is fabulous. But what these people need to see is just how invaluable you are on the day when things go horribly wrong. So what you might do is turn up for the 4-hour exercise for nothing. But you will get a lot more work on the back end of this. And quite a lot of them realise that and then turn up for nothing. So I've done a load of those and they work really well, but it doesn't have to cost the earth.
And I think we did a debrief of an air incident, and they had the PR company was quite happy to take the money and the retainers. They had the real incident. The PR company came in and they just didn't know the organisation. They didn't have a feel for it. And within 2 days, they said, get me another PR company. We need PR companies, no doubt about it. You've got to exercise with PR companies. You've got to invite them in. And as you say, a sensible PR company will say, yes, we'll do that. But you've got to build that relationship. There's no point having lawyers or anybody else, specialist people you don't exercise with, because they don't understand the ethos, the way of working. And if we're all a team, we're all working together, we work well, and this third party comes in and says, have you thought that? No, we did that 3 exercises ago. We moved on beyond that. This is us. You've got to, this is the way I think third party suppliers like PR companies, you've got to exercise with them.
The other thing I think is if people ask for this in contracts, they sort of say, you must exercise with us so many times a year. My old procurement mentor used to say, if you give a contract a risk, they'll give you cost. If you ask for the world, you'll be charged for the world. So you've just got to be aware that you don't over-ask when you just think it's a good thing to have. You want to do what you need, what's required, rather than what you'd like.
But you can do quick and dirty.
Absolutely.
You're a supplier.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. This is such and such. We're running an exercise. I just want to ask you a question. If something happened now and we needed you to redirect supplies, how quickly could you do it? It's such quick, you're talking about these quick and dirty exercises that you're the expert at.
Yeah.
Those quick and dirties just give you a glimmer of the person on the other end going, I have no idea what we do, leave it with me, we'll get back to you. And they never get back to you. That gives you an indication then of the type of supplier you're dealing with. It doesn't always have to be the pre-Olympic exercise. It's a quick and dirty phone call. What would you do in the event of?
So would you classify that as it's not exactly an unannounced exercise, but it is unannounced to that particular vendor, isn't it?
What's wrong with them?
Yeah. Well, that was my question really, because we know we ask that question when we're tutoring, don't we? Would you run an unannounced exercise? Do you?
I don't like unannounced exercises because I think in terms of what's the benefit, if you want to check and get hold of people, bring them at the weekend. There's an exercise. I used to do that angling water. I used to do that once a quarter, and I just used to ring all the executives. That was my job. All the executives at a weekend, see if we can get hold of them. And that's the unannounced bit. That's what you need to do there. The rest of the exercise, once they're all turned up, is another exercise.
No notice exercises at an operational level is really good to do. For example, when I was in the police, your whole life when I was in firearms was unannounced. This has happened. Scramble a team, go to a venue, put them through what they would do. You don't want to be pre-briefing them on it. You want them to go in to check the standard operating procedures. So at an operational level, DR, this server's gone down. What would we do? That's where the spontaneousness of the incident really grips you. Short time, quick and dirty, no notice. But, however, organisational risk. Got to be really careful.
I was going to say, you're going to bring risk, assuming you manage the risk. And that's part of the
someone
preparation.
drives at 100 miles an hour to go and get in the incident room.
Absolutely.
On the way
so you've got to take all that into account. That's why I don't generally run no notice at any other level apart from an ops level.